Sometimes, the loudest person in the room is also the most insecure, but the one who commands the most respect is often the calmest. Not because they shout, but because they don't need to. There is something deeply magnetic about a person who moves with intention, who does not rush to prove, to please, or to explain. Their presence alone speaks. And when you carry that energy into your relationships, you change how people treat you, not by force, but by frequency. Respect begins long before words are spoken. It begins with the way you hold yourself. It begins with whether your mind is scattered or steady, whether your emotions control you or you control them. Today, we are going to explore the inner shifts that cause the outer world to respond to you with respect. And the first step is this: learn how to come home to yourself before you ask others to see your worth. Have you ever entered a room and instantly felt the energy shift before a single word was spoken? Maybe someone walked in, not loudly, not demanding attention, and yet you turned to look. Something in their presence spoke to you. It wasn't their clothes. It wasn't how tall they stood. It was the way they carried themselves, their calmness, their groundedness. It sent a silent message. I don't need to prove anything. I know who I am. That energy commands respect. This is the unspoken language of self-mastery. A deep truth lives here. Your energy often enters the room before you do. Before you shake a hand, before you make a request, before you utter a sentence, your nervous system is already communicating, and people are already responding. The human brain is a scanning machine. Every day, without our conscious awareness, our brain makes thousands of micro-assessments. Who's safe? Who's confident? Who's desperate? Who's pretending? This happens in less than a second. And it's not words that inform these judgments. It's your breath, your posture, the way your eyes meet someone else's. It's the stillness or agitation you carry in your body. This is not spiritual theory. This is neuroscience. The amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting safety and threat, processes non-verbal cues faster than it processes speech. That means people feel your energy before they hear your message. And this energy determines whether they lean in with respect or pull back with guardedness. Respect does not begin with titles, age, or appearances. It begins with the frequency you emit, and that frequency is determined by how much peace you have within yourself. Consider a woman entering a boardroom full of opinionated voices. She does not interrupt. She listens first. Her eyes are attentive, her back upright, her breathing slow and stable. When she speaks, there's no strain in her voice, only calm clarity. She doesn't argue. She doesn't need to. Her presence carries weight, not because she demands to be respected, but because her stillness, her deliberate presence, makes it impossible to ignore her. Now contrast that with someone who is constantly seeking validation. They talk over others, speak quickly, interrupt frequently, try to dominate through volume. What they're doing is trying to compensate for an inner emptiness, and people can feel it. It doesn't evoke respect. It creates resistance. Your physiology matters more than you think. Emotional energy is transmitted through muscle tone, facial expressions, and breath rhythm. A regulated nervous system communicates safety, and people respect what makes them feel safe, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Imagine for a moment that you are a tree. Your roots reach deeply into the ground. The wind can come, storms can pass, but you do not fall. You do not react wildly to every gust. Instead, you remain upright, connected to something deeper. This is what inner stillness looks like. And the more rooted you are in your own values, your own breath, your own body, the more others will instinctively respect you. A true story comes to mind of a teacher who once sat silently in front of a noisy classroom. The students continued to chatter and move about. He didn't raise his voice. He simply waited, breathing slowly, making gentle eye contact, saying nothing. One by one, the students began to quiet themselves, not because he commanded silence, but because his energy invited them into stillness. He didn't need authority to be respected, he embodied it. This kind of presence is available to all of us. But it is cultivated, not performed. It begins with how you wake up. When you start the day rushed, disconnected from your breath, scrolling through chaos before even grounding your mind, you carry that same scattered energy into every interaction. But if you begin your day in silence, even 5 minutes of deep breathing, gentle movement, or mindful reflection, your entire nervous system shifts. You become the anchor in the storm, not the leaf being blown by it. In relationships, this principle holds even greater power. People often say, I just want to be respected in my relationship. I want to be heard. But being heard starts with being attuned. Are you attuned to yourself first? A woman who commands respect in love is not one who nags, begs, or chases. She is one who holds her center, even when emotions rise. She doesn't collapse into chaos just because the other person does. Her presence becomes a mirror, inviting the other to rise to the level of her emotional discipline. There's a sacred lesson here. People respond to how you treat yourself. If your own energy tells the world, I am calm, I am clear, I am not here to compete, then you create a field where respect becomes the only natural response. And yet, presence alone is not enough if the words you speak betray your center. Once your presence is felt, the next doorway through which respect is either built or broken is through your speech. And in a noisy world, speaking less, but with more meaning, becomes a superpower. Too often, we speak from a place of insecurity. We over-explain. We talk to fill the silence. We speak quickly to prove we're smart or interesting or worthy. But here is a powerful truth. A person who is secure within themselves does not rush to speak. They speak when it adds value. They speak when it aligns with truth. And because of that, people lean in. There is wisdom in choosing words as though each one is a seed that either creates peace or confusion, connection or control, compassion or confrontation. Intentional speech is not about manipulation. It is about clarity. When you learn to pause before responding, to breathe before reacting, to ask yourself, what is the energy behind my words? You move from unconscious reaction to conscious response. And that is where respect begins to deepen. In moments of conflict, this becomes your greatest power. Imagine being in a heated argument with a partner. Tension is high, words are flying. But instead of reacting, you take a breath. You observe your emotions instead of becoming them. And then you respond, not to win, not to hurt, but to bring clarity. You might say something like, I hear what you're feeling. I want us to understand each other more than I want to be right. Suddenly, the energy shifts. The conversation no longer becomes about domination, but about connection. This is emotional maturity in action. And people respect those who prioritize truth over ego. There's a quote often shared in Eastern philosophy: speak only when your words are more beautiful than silence. What would change in your relationships if you lived by this? How much less conflict would there be if you replaced reaction with reflection? When you speak with presence, with purpose, and with peace, you reveal something rare. You show that you are not driven by emotional storms. You are the eye of the storm, and others feel it. They begin to mirror it. This is why intentional speech is not just a communication tool, it's a spiritual practice. You are shaping the reality of your relationships with every sentence you speak. You are teaching people how to respect you by how you respect your own voice. There is a story of a monk who was once insulted by a passerby. The man shouted at him, called him names, tried to provoke him. The monk simply smiled. When asked why he didn't respond, he said, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, who does the gift belong to?" The power of this moment wasn't in silence alone. It was in the choice not to react, not to give power to provocation. That is strength, that is self-command, that is respect. When you choose to speak only what is necessary, you begin to value silence. And in that silence, you begin to feel your own presence more deeply. From there, every word becomes intentional, every conversation becomes sacred, and every relationship becomes a ground for self-respect to grow. So if you want to be respected, don't raise your voice. Raise your presence. If you want to be heard, don't fight for space. Create resonance with your words. Let your speech be a reflection of your inner calm, not a reaction to outer chaos. And when others feel that grounded energy in your tone, in your pace, in your message, they don't just listen, they ever respect, not because you told them to, but because you became someone who no longer needs to. There is a silent language you teach the world through the way you hold your space. Every time you say yes when you meant no, you reveal a crack in your boundary. Every time you allow someone to cross a line without consequence, you unconsciously announce, "My peace is negotiable." And what is negotiable will never be truly respected. Boundaries are not walls. They are not punishments or tools of revenge. Boundaries are mirrors of self-worth. They are sacred lines that teach others how to treat you, not through threats or lectures, but through your consistency. People do not learn who you are by what you tolerate once, but by what you allow repeatedly. In relationships, this becomes especially vital. The partner who constantly pushes you to prove your love, to give more than you're ready to excuse their disrespectful behavior under the name of passion, is not testing your devotion. They are testing the strength of your self-regard. And so many fall into this pattern unknowingly. In the name of love, they abandon themselves. They override their discomfort. They stay quiet when disrespected, hoping kindness will transform the other person. But love without self-respect is not love, it is self-erasure. And people sense it. They may not say it aloud, but the moment someone realizes you will bend your boundaries to keep their approval, you've traded respect for attachment. And what you gain in closeness, you lose in dignity. It takes quiet courage to uphold a boundary. It requires a pause before the automatic yes. A moment of honesty with yourself. Is this aligned with who I am? Or am I choosing this out of fear? It may look like ending a conversation when the tone turns disrespectful. It may sound like, "I care about this connection, but I won't allow shouting to be a part of it." Not because you are hard, but because you are rooted. In one real life story, a woman named Alina spent years in a relationship where small boundaries were constantly crossed. Her time was not respected. Her emotional needs were minimized. Whenever she tried to speak, the response was either defensiveness or mockery. For a long time, she made excuses. "Has just stressed," she'd say. Or, "Maybe I'm asking for too much." But with time, a fatigue began to take root in her spirit. It wasn't just the relationship that was tiring her. It was the quiet betrayal of herself, day after day. One day, she sat alone and wrote a letter, not to him, but to herself. She listed everything she had been silencing. And in that moment, something shifted. She began to reclaim her voice. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. But she started saying no, calmly, clearly, not with anger, but with clarity. The first few weeks were uncomfortable. He resisted. He tested. But the more consistent she became, the more the energy between them changed. He began to pause before raising his voice. He started listening, not out of fear, but because he could feel that she now respected herself. And that energy demanded mutual respect. Your boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about honoring yourself. And honoring yourself changes everything. There's a saying, what you allow is what will continue. But there's a deeper wisdom hidden underneath that. What you allow not only continues, it conditions your nervous system. Every time you allow mistreatment, your body starts to accept it as normal. Your mind begins to rationalize it. Your heart begins to shrink under it. But when you begin to say, no more, something profound happens. Your spine straightens, your voice deepens, your energy begins to expand again. This is not an act of ego, it is an act of alignment. And once you learn to honor your boundaries, a deeper stillness starts to emerge from within you, a calm that no longer needs to explain itself. This is the stillness that many confuse for coldness, but it is not cold, it is centered. It is not rigid, it is rooted. Stillness is strength, not the kind of strength that intimidates, but the kind that anchors. In the modern world, many people associate power with dominance, noise, and aggression. But those who truly command respect do so not by raising their voice, but by mastering their nervous system. The human body is an antenna. Every emotion we feel has a physiological signature. Anger tightens the jaw, speeds up the breath. Fear causes the chest to constrict. Anxiety pushes our speech to be faster, more frantic. These signals are not just internal, they are air transmitted, and others receive them, consciously or not. This is why someone who is physically still, emotionally regulated, and mentally focused will instantly shift the energy of a room. They are not reacting, they are responding. And that distinction is everything. Take the example of Cameron, a father of two, navigating a high, stressed job and a home life filled with tension. For years, he was known for his temper. The smallest mistake from his children or his team would ignite a wave of frustration. He thought this was leadership. He believed firmness meant loudness. But as his relationships began to erode, he was forced to look inward. What he discovered was not weakness. It was fatigue. His nervous system was stuck in a constant state of survival. He wasn't responding from wisdom. He was reacting from fear and pressure. So he began a practice of breathwork, learning to slow his exhale, to feel his feet on the ground during conflict. At first, the changes were subtle. He paused longer before replying. He no longer stormed out during disagreements. But over time, something remarkable happened. His children began to approach him more. His team started offering honest feedback. And most of all, his presence began to carry something it never had before: respect rooted in safety. Stillness is not absence of emotion. It is the mastery of it. It is the ability to feel deeply, but not be hijacked by your feelings. When you can stand in the middle of chaos and not let it enter you, people feel it. They don't know why, but they trust you. Because the person who can stay calm under pressure is the person who can be trusted in storms. This is not just philosophy. It is grounded in physiology. The vagus nerve, the body's communication superhighway, plays a central role in how we experience and regulate stress. When this system is trained through breath, mindfulness, and emotional awareness, our entire being becomes more resilient. We no longer live on edge. We begin to live from the center. And from that center, our words soften, our decisions deepen, and our presence becomes magnetic. Relationships flourish in the presence of calm authority. Not dominance, not emotional withdrawal, but the kind of quiet strength that allows others to feel safe in your presence. The person who can hold space for another's emotions without being swept away by them is a rare and sacred presence. A powerful image to reflect on is that of a mountain. The mountain does not chase the wind. It does not plead with the clouds to stay. It remains rooted in the earth, unmoved by external weather, and yet everything around it adjusts. Birds land, winds soften, rain flows down. That is the energy of someone who has learned stillness. Stillness isn't taught in school. It is rarely celebrated in society, but it is the foundation of all great leadership, all lasting relationships, all meaningful self-respect. It is in the quiet space between a provocation and a response that wisdom lives. In romantic relationships, this becomes even more powerful. When your partner sees that you can hold emotional space without collapsing into drama or control, they begin to trust you more deeply. You become the calm in their chaos, not by suppressing emotion, but by choosing how and when to express it. There's a difference between reacting and revealing. Reaction is impulsive. It wants relief. Revealing is intentional. It seeks understanding. A woman who practices stillness in love may feel everything, but she does not let temporary feelings destroy permanent bonds. Her strength is not in being unaffected. It is in being deeply feeling, yet wisely expressed, and that level of emotional maturity is deeply respected. One man described it this way: when she's upset, she doesn't throw knives with her words. She breathes, she pauses, and then she tells me what hurt. And because she doesn't attack, I actually listen. I want to protect her peace, because she protects it herself. What we respect in others is what we yearn to become, and what we protect in ourselves teaches others how to love us. Stillness creates space, and in that space, truth can be heard, people can reflect, healing can occur, arguments can soften, trust can be rebuilt. But without stillness, even the best intentions get lost in noise. So when you feel disrespected, the question is not only, why did they treat me this way? But also, how have I taught them to treat me? And the answer often lies not in the grand gestures, but in the small moments. The sigh you didn't voice, the limit you didn't hold, the silence you didn't break, or the emotional chaos you allowed to run free without grounding it in awareness. To be respected is not about control. It is about less clarity. To know who you are, to know where you end and another begins, to know when to speak and when to breathe, when to walk away, not out of anger, but because your peace is too expensive to lose. The journey to that kind of clarity is not loud, it is not fast, it is not performative, it is still, it is steady, and it is yours to begin. There is a subtle power that arises when you no longer look to others for permission to be who you are. This is not arrogance. This is not defiance. It is clarity, the kind of clarity that comes when you stop measuring your value by how others respond to you. You begin to realize that seeking constant approval is a form of self-abandonment. It may appear harmless, wanting to be liked, to be validated, to feel accepted, but over time, it carves out space in your heart where your identity should live. Respect that lasts does not begin outside of you. It is built quietly in the unseen moments when you choose not to betray your standards just to be chosen. When you choose your principles over popularity, when you uphold your truth, even if it means standing alone. People can sense when your actions are driven by external approval. There's a dissonance in your energy. You speak one thing, but your body says something else. You smile, but it's tight. You agree, but there's hesitation in your tone. You give, but you feel depleted afterward. This incongruence doesn't go unnoticed. It weakens the respect people have for you. Not because they're unkind, but because energy doesn't lie. And deep down, people admire what is rooted more than what is agreeable. Living by inner standards begins when you decide that your self-worth will not fluctuate with praise or rejection. It's choosing to be loyal to your values even when there's no applause. It's easy to be consistent when others are watching. The real test is when no one sees, when no one compliments your integrity, When no one claps for your boundaries, will you still live by them? There was once a woman named Rania who had a history of bending herself in relationships. Each time she met someone new, she would shift, change how she dressed, how she spoke, even her daily habits, all to fit into what she believed the other person wanted. And at first, it worked. She was liked. She was admired. But in time, something would always shift. The admiration would fade, the respect would dwindle, and eventually the relationship would crumble. One day, she sat with this pattern and asked herself a difficult question. What am I sacrificing just to be accepted? That question broke something open inside her. She realized she had built connections on performance, not authenticity. So she made a decision. She wouldn't chase. She wouldn't perform. She would begin to show up exactly as she was. Unfiltered, soft when she felt soft, fierce when her intuition called for it. Some people didn't know how to handle the shift. Some even left. But the ones who stayed with respect. And for the first time, Rainier felt seen, not for her effort, but for her essence. This is the power of living from inner standards. You no longer need to convince others to respect you, because you carry the quiet conviction that you respect yourself. Detachment from external validation does not mean you stop caring about others. It means you care deeply, but you no longer allow their opinions to override your truth. This creates emotional freedom. And from that freedom, you begin to make decisions not from fear or approval seeking, but from alignment. In romantic relationships, this becomes a foundation for genuine connection. When both partners live from their inner truth rather than emotional dependency, the relationship becomes a sanctuary, not a battlefield. There's no pressure to constantly impress or meet unrealistic expectations. Instead, there's space for growth, honesty, and respect. You begin to notice something remarkable. The more you live in alignment with your own values, the more others naturally elevate how they treat you. This is not magic. It's a reflection. People are constantly responding to the standards you hold within yourself. If you tolerate inconsistency, you will receive it. If you embody clarity, you will attract it. If you operate from fear, others will sense it. But if you move from groundedness, from authenticity, your very presence becomes a guide for how others should engage with you. There's a parable about a lion raised by sheep. He ate grass, ran from threats, and thought himself weak. One day, another lion found him, saw his confusion, and led him to a still lake. "Look," the lion said, and when he saw his reflection, everything changed. In that moment, he remembered who he was, not because someone told him, but because he saw it with his own eyes. When you live from your inner standard, you no longer wait for someone to name your value. You remember it, you become it, and the world begins to reflect it back. But there's another layer of self-respect that often goes unnoticed. It's how you respond when your emotions are tested. In the most intimate moments, when you feel dismissed, misunderstood, or attacked, do you fall into reaction, or do you rise into emotional discipline? To be respected in your relationships, you must learn how to manage the heat without burning everything down. This is where emotional discipline becomes your superpower. It's not about suppression. It's not about pretending you're unaffected. It's about choosing your response from a place of self-awareness rather than emotional chaos. There's an old truth: when you master your emotions, you master your relationships, because most conflict is not about what happened. It's about how it was handled. And how something is handled depends entirely on how you manage your own internal state. Emotional discipline starts with awareness. It's noticing the trigger before it becomes a tantrum. It's catching the story before it becomes a storm. And it's choosing to pause, to breathe, and to ground yourself in the moment, especially when everything in you wants to react. Consider the story of Daniel, a man who struggled for years with explosive reactions. Every time his partner brought up an issue, he felt accused. Instead of listening, he defended. Instead of staying present, he escaped, sometimes with sarcasm, sometimes by leaving the room, sometimes by saying words he couldn't take back. Each time, he would apologize, but the damage would linger. One day, after yet another argument, he sat alone and asked himself, "What am I so afraid of that I need to protect myself with anger?" The answer surprised him. It wasn't pride. It was pain. Deep down, he feared being seen as inadequate, and every criticism felt like confirmation of that fear. So he began doing something different. He made a commitment. Before speaking in conflict, he would place one hand on his chest and take 3 breaths. That one small practice gave him the space to choose differently. Over time, his reaction softened, his words became more intentional, and his partner noticed. She began to feel safer opening up, not because the issues disappeared, but because she no longer feared his response. Respect returned, not through control, but through care. When you show up with emotional discipline, you shift the entire dynamic. You set the tone. Instead of fueling the fire, you become the cooling presence that allows truth to be heard. In heated moments, this often sounds like, "I'm feeling a lot right now. I want to respond with care. Give me a moment." Or, "I don't want to say something I'll regret. Let's take a breath together." These simple statements are not weakness. They are acts of mastery. They show that you value the relationship enough to stay conscious. And consciousness creates connection. Emotional discipline also means choosing what not to say. Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every emotion needs an audience. Sometimes the greatest power is in restraint. There's a lesson from martial arts. The strongest punch is the one you don't throw. Not because you're afraid, but because you have nothing to prove. In the same way, emotional discipline is not about avoiding confrontation. It's about showing up with clarity and care, even when your inner world feels shaken. You begin to notice that people listen more when you are calm, that solutions arrive faster when you don't escalate, that your own self-respect deepens when you choose reflection over reaction. This doesn't mean perfection. You will still stumble. You will still feel hurt, angry, overwhelmed. But the difference is this: you stop letting your emotions run the show. You become the director again. You choose the script, and the more you choose wisely, the more respect follows, not just from others, but from yourself. Emotional maturity is not glamorous. It is not loud, but it is powerful, and it transforms every relationship it touches. When your partner sees that you do not attack when triggered, but instead lean into understanding, they begin to feel safe, not just loved, but respected. That safety deepens trust, and trust becomes the foundation for something rare, a relationship where both people can grow without fear. A woman once said, "When he's upset, he doesn't lash out. He tells me, 'Give me a little space to find the right words.' And every time he does, I admire him more." This is the quiet impact of emotional discipline. It creates admiration, even in conflict. But to get there, you must be willing to train your inner world more than your outer image. You must be more committed to peace than to being right. You must